Good evening and welcome to the September 16th Common Council City of Connersville. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman David Collins.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd like to remain standing, Mary Lou, come up and open the invocation.
God, our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this opportunity tonight to come and bless this meeting and give them the strength that they need for the service that they are providing to this community. Bless us all, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone. Please remind you to turn your cell phone ringers off. We will begin with roll call.
Councilman Collins?
Present.
Councilwoman McQueen? Present. Councilwoman Barrett?
Present.
Councilman Williams Jr.?
Present.
Councilwoman Phillips?
Present.
Councilman Robb?
Present.
Councilman Gray?
Present.
Okay, everyone has the minutes from the September 3rd, 2024 regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Move on down to new business. We have approval of pending ordinance 3955. It's delete a handicapped parking. The Board of Works looked at that this afternoon, and their recommendation is to have this deleted for the constituents' request. Are there any questions on this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a motion and second to approve pending ordinance 3955. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Do I have a motion for third and final reading?
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried. On down to item B, we have approval of pending ordinance 3956. It's a transfer. Rosemary?
Pending ordinance 3956 is a transfer within the park budget, moving $6,700 from repair of buildings to pool chemicals.
Anybody have any questions? If not, entertain a motion to approve pending ordinance 3956 on first reading.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Do I have a motion for third and final reading?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to item B, we have a public hearing for the 2025 budget and first reading. Adam, you want to come up, sir, and do your presentation?
That's okay. You
No.
just skip. That's okay. We'll go back.
Would it be okay if I move this over here?
Yes, you're fine. We'll get that after
I'm
this.
not blocking anybody right here, am I? No? Alright. And disclaimer, I don't know what everyone's here, but I can tell you, years and years and years ago when I was in high school, for extra credit that I needed, unfortunately, we had to attend a local council meeting and then look at work, and then I ended up in this profession, you know what I mean? So municipal finance, we need you. Accounting, a great profession. Okay. My name's Adam. I'm here tonight to provide a public hearing overview of the proposed 2025 City of Connersville budget. And I'm going to walk through the slides. We'll walk through the department requests as well. Tonight is not the adoption. Feel free to take all of this under consideration. There has been, I don't believe, any changes since the electronic versions you received a week or so ago. So these are all the same drafts that have been shared with the committee as well. And while I'm the person providing the summary tonight, The department heads were intimately involved in this process. They all have copies of these drafts as well. And to the extent there's any questions that I'm not able to answer as far as specific uses of the dollars, I'm sure they'll be able to provide some context as well. So this process started back in the spring. So, we're going to talk through timeline. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. So just kind of get into it. With the first council planning workshop back in May, and if you recall, we were doing sort of budget 101 sessions last January. So I know you're all probably tired of hearing from me, and I understand that. As far as the cadence, tonight's the required public hearing. It was duly noticed via the state's gateway portal. So tonight is a public hearing. At your next regularly scheduled meeting would be the second reading and the adoption. So if that was the council's pleasure. By state law, a budget has to be adopted no later than November 1st, or it reverts back to the last legally adopted budget. Okay? So there's sort of at least one regularly scheduled meeting built in there if you need it. As far as the executive summary, I'm going to go through a lot of details. There's thousands of line items in the city's budget, so trying to consolidate and still be transparent as we can, but also just be concise. Try to bubble up the most important things here. So from a budget overview perspective, it is balanced. This is just in the time that I've worked with the city, this is the first time that the proposed budget on the general fund has been balanced at this point. So the overall city funds were balanced last year. This was a really good step to getting the general fund addressed. So that's key. There's no proposed increase in the property tax rate as part of the proposed budget. 74% of the general fund dollars goes to public safety. That's defined as fire department, police department, and EMS or first aid. Does provide non-public safety or civilian employees. It recommends a 3% cost of living adjustment. We're going to look at the cash position, and the cash position in the budget is estimated as of December 31st, 2025. It does also provide new project funding opportunities. We'll talk about that as we get into it, specifically for the River's Edge project. As far as things that we still would recommend that the city and council pay attention to long term. We are, obviously, inflation has hit everyone's budget, both personally and professionally. It's not, Connersville as a city is not immune to that. So we are monitoring that specifically as it relates to the revenue growth versus just operating expense. When you look at insurance renewals, premiums, and those types of things, that's becoming a larger and larger percent of the budget. And if they're growing at a rate faster than the revenue, that is something that we need to sort of pay attention to. Fringe benefit costs as a percentage of total compensation is another thing that we have on our sort of watch list going forward, specifically with that plan mentioned. The public safety pension contribution rate, so that's a pension plan specifically, it's 1977 police and fire plan. A couple years ago, for about 6 straight years, the city contribution on that retirement plan was 17.5% of wages. It popped up to about 19.1 this year, and then went to 20.3% of total wages for 2025. So that over the last few years, you've seen 4 to 5% increase in the city's contribution to that pension, and that's while the wages are going up as well, right? So we're just kind of monitoring that. The local department specific revenues, that's really defined as, you have the governmental revenues like property tax, local income tax, share of the state revenues, but department specific sort of user generated fees, park fees, those types of things, we're going to continue to kind of pay attention to, make sure those are being efficient and being looked at, just to try to make sure we're not being overly reliant on tax sources that the city doesn't have a lot of control over as far as how much it can change. And then lastly, we'll talk about the TV3 funding that's proposed to close their cost gap, as well as long-term the airport share of property tax levy. And So the update since the last workshop, department heads have helped us get the final drafts. We've shared out copies electronically. There have been no changes since those copies have been shared. Clerk Treasurer's Office, again, has been fantastic. She helped with all the gateway and the Form 3 notice to taxpayers that's out there. Just as a bit of a refresher, especially for the public that's here, the budget has to be duly noticed each year, and that notice really sets the not to exceed amount of the budget. So it essentially precedes this hearing, and it sets the maximum amount that can be approved by council. So usually statewide, those numbers are somewhat higher than otherwise estimated, just to provide council the opportunity to move things around fund to fund. So typically speaking, the adopted amounts will be lower than what's advertised. And then we worked through the 3% cost of living adjustment. We've calculated and budgeted the $5,000 salary adjustment for each full-time public safety employee to be paid from the new public safety local income tax that will go into effect January 1st, 2025. As you see in the budget notes, a lot of the adjustments were really trend-based. So either, things through the first 6 months of the year were just kind of costing a little bit more, so we adjusted for that. There are some things that we weren't spending as much as budget, so we pulled those down. And then there were specific adjustments to like health insurance premiums, property and casualty insurance premiums, etc. As well as overtime. There are 3 different departmental adjustments, and then fire has a proposed specialty pay adjustment and longevity pay adjustment as well. Next set of adjustments we made, we went through the legal has additional bucket of hours allocated to it to increase utilization there, as well as the same thing. We worked closely with the Parks and Recreation Department to review their part-time hours and make sure. So this budget actually has a sort of a rebalancing and a net increase in the part-time hours anticipated for next year. The TV3 program, the cable franchise fees have been declining, in trend for some time, and they had gotten to the point in 2025 where it was quite a bit lower than the actual expenses of that program were quite a bit less than the recurring cable franchise fees were providing. So the budget includes a city contribution to that fund to basically balance their expenses, and that's in the neighborhood of about $90,000. The majority of all their department requests that we received have been, I think, for the large part included. I hope that is echoed. There's always things that are wish list items or things that may not make it in, but we do try to keep note of those and address them over time. Our goal is to provide a budget that is as comprehensive on these things as we need, because ultimately the budget is just a prioritization exercise, right? There's a finite amount of revenues that we have, and we're just trying to get as many of those priorities into the plan as we possibly can. We talked about the pension rates, and then overall, there are some departments that are considerably higher than this, but on average, the city share of fringe benefits for 2025 is estimated at $35,000. So that was sort of the expense high-level review. As far as revenues, statewide, every unit of government in Indiana has a property tax controlled limit before any adjustments of 4%. The net assessed valuation for the city of Connersville next year is up 17%. So in other words, the city is growing 4 times faster next year than the state's allowing the revenue to grow. And that creates a lot of interesting conversations and questions as you talk about administering and providing service for a growing community. The other aspect to that is local income tax. This is specifically what's called the certified share, so this is independent of the new public safety income tax. Okay, this was what was withstanding or existing prior. It increased 4.67% or $110,000 for next year. The new public safety income tax, which is simply 0.25% on incomes in the county allocated to the city. The city's portion is estimated at $650,000. We are being, this is the first year we are taking an estimate of that. It is not a certified number. It won't be a certified number until 2026. So we largely base this on what was certified this year with a little bit of trending. So I think it's a pretty conservative number. We may end plus or minus a little bit higher or a little bit lower, but I don't think we're wildly out of the ballpark with the $650,000. And then it is allocated to, specifically to public safety. We first and foremost tried to make sure we got the $5,000 in salary and related kind of benefit costs and other employment costs that are associated with that factored in, and then really balance the fund then based on capital replacement after that. So 100% of the dollars are going to public safety. It just, we first focused on getting the salary in there that was discussed, and then really balanced it by capital. So this chart is the blue graph component. The bar component is the net assessed value as a percent growth year over year. And just as a reminder, these are pay years. So pay 25 would be properties assessed January 1st, 2024, payable 2025. So the pay 25 AV is the largest percent growth, really, you know, that's what we've pulled since 2019. It's considerably higher, really, even than the past trend. I mean, it's basically double what it has been. And the red line is what is called the levy growth. So in the state of Indiana, the total amount of property tax that can be levied on properties within a jurisdiction is actually controlled by the state of Indiana. It's not controlled at the unit. So the state of Indiana looks at the trailing last 6 years of non-farm payrolls. They take the average, and historically, up until the last year or two, that has been what the levy can grow at. Okay. Over the last 2 legislative cycles, they've actually stepped in and even said, hey, that number is too high. So they set basically an arbitrary limit of 4% levy growth each year. Okay. So basically the property tax before any adjustments is capped at about a 4% growth rate for 2025 and 2026. The city growing, assessed value growing quite a bit higher than that, basically pushes the tax rate actually down. Okay. The challenge is that if that trend continues, you're going to be in a position where you're a much larger community with a lot less taxing power to provide for services. So in a situation where you're already trying to make sure to provide more services today, you have a less sort of taxing power to provide that in the future, that's something that we need to try to monitor. So the tax rate for the city is actually a derived value. It's a division, and it's the assessed value, which really it's the levy divided by the assessed value. And so if you have a situation where the denominator in an equation is going up faster than the numerator, the sort of output of that equation is going to come down, and that's exactly what we see happening here. So for 2024, the property tax rate for the city of Connersville taxpayers is $3.29 per $100 of assessed value. Okay, so $3 for every $100. And right now, based on the assessed value growth for 2025, if council really doesn't do anything other than adopt the kind of base budget, doesn't do the new debt service levy, that tax rate should fall by about 11% down to $2.93. We've proposed a couple different options from a budgetary perspective. You know, as we discussed, our professional opinion is actually a flat tax rate to flat to slightly decreasing over time, to try to pass through that savings, and then secondarily make sure you still have that kind of taxing power to be able to, you know, handle, you know, things that are unknown in the future. So option 1 is keep the rate flat. That would be just basically adopt it as the same rate. Option 2 would be kind of split it in half, let it fall to a point, but not 11%. And I'll show you a chart here in a second that I think summarizes this better visually. So I'm going to approach this just for a second. So 2018 through 2025, This is the tax rate again per $100 of assessed value, net assessed value. So the you can see the tax rate was increasing really all the way through 2021, and that is because in those years the city's net assessed value was growing less than that levy rate. So if we go back a few slides, that's right here. Okay, it's when this red line is above the blue, the tax rate's going to go up. When the blue is above the red, the tax rate's going to go down. And the more there is a delta or a difference between that, the more aggressive the slope of that's going to be. So that's exactly what we see here. So we see when the net assessed value in the city wasn't growing as fast, tax rates are going up, right? The people that are here are paying more share of the cost of service. The minute that it starts growing, you have the situation where the tax rate falls. And over the last few years, this is a pretty good trend, actually. I mean, this is in that sort of, it's not flat, but it's decreasing, but it's not like dramatic. When we have a 17% increase in 1 year, you can see what happens to the slope. This would be a pretty big drop over 1 year. The challenge with the tax rate is it is a year-to-year thing. So what we generally recommend is, try to keep the tax rate pretty flat, maybe slightly declining. We want it to be basically pretty boring and pretty predictable, so that we're not having big swings. Not 1 year is it drop and the next year it spikes back up. We want it to be nice and predictable. So if we do the new kind of project financing, you would be somewhere kind of in this area. If you don't do the new project financing, that's totally fine. Tax rate's going to fall further, and you lose those dollars going forward. The challenge is that is pretty much a permanent loss in that levy for the city, and that's why we just wanted to bring that up. So the budget as advertised and as proposed assumes the tax rate stays flat. We advertise that way so the council can sort of entertain all these different options and make the choice that's the most important for you all. And the project that's been identified to this point is River's Edge as something that could benefit from this sort of situation or opportunity. Okay. All right. So the allocation of the budget right now, about 82% of the budget is in the general fund. The general fund pays most of the departments with the exception of a few. Basically all of public safety's operating is in the general fund, for example. All of the administration is in the general as well. Followed by park is at 11%, the next largest recipient of the property tax allocation, and the motor vehicle highway, which is equivalent to like road and street. One note we have here, while it's not a significant percent, it's less than 2%, just in comparing this to other units in Indiana, the airport is one we would put sort of on that long-term watch list, is one we would like to see them become more self-sufficient over time and less reliant on property tax levy. And that would just create additional levy dollars to be then allocated to the general fund, parks, road and street, etc. So it's just a long-term sort of directional item. So the total levy for next year is just over $13 million. When we look at everything with the current debt service, the anticipated debt service, all the adjustments, we're looking at the split work to be about 75-25. And really what brings that in is all the funding sources, all the commitments. And keep in mind that the debt levy, in this case in Indiana, is that property tax is really only committed to the city if those funds are appropriated and then that project is approved. From a staffing perspective, there's no new full-time positions proposed. It removes the funding for the vacant mayor's office secretary position. It maintains funding for the unfilled city engineer position. It increases the part-time bucket of hours as well for part-time and seasonal. It adjusts the police department salaries based on their contract negotiations. Adds the pay adjustment for police, fire, and EMS full-time via the public safety local income tax. Increases the pension rate we talked about. Adjusts the fire longevity as a percent of pay. and adjusts a lot of the benefit and other employment costs related to trends. From a project perspective, we're in the neighborhood of really $5 to $10 million for the River's Edge project or project that the council prioritizes, and that would be through the issuance of the new bond. That would be the tax rate option, okay? So that one is only feasible if you decide to keep the tax rate the same or similar. We've got $87,000 for police equipment replacement via the public safety local income tax, $88,000 for fire other equipment, public safety local income tax, and $60,000 for EMS and the public safety local income tax. $49,000 for landfill equipment, $100,000 for parks and other equipment, as well as $5,000 in parks capital. There's $390,000 in park paving project I should say, for the street department. We've got $90,000 to close the funding gap in TV3. We've increased the legal hours, as well as the public safety pension contribution, and then we've updated the for all the lease and bond payments the city as well. So this is what it looks like at the summary level. This is general fund by department. So the total general fund requested budget this year adopted was $13,066,587. The proposed 2025 increases that budget to $13,479,320, for an increase of $412,733. I put the percent change there just to try to help. I know there's a lot of the budgets are presented as a line item budget within these departments. So the attorney, really the largest change there, it was just the additional hours, and it's just a kind of a large percent change. It's a relatively small amount of the total department, total fund. City council, a lot of that is in really three changes. There was the TV3 contribution of $90,000, and then there was some sort of project evaluation and monitoring kind of feasibility, putting council other contractual services. The city staff is investigating a couple different sort of projects, and it's really just contingent funding at this point, flexible funding. No change to city or town hall. The clerk treasurer's budget was mostly just the COLA adjustment, the cost of living adjustment. EMS was largely some trending items that was requested by the department, and then largely the pension adjustment. Fire had some programmatic changes with specialty pay that was really kind of a net, no change. The longevity as a percent of pay was an increase, but to try to help offset that, there were some other non-personnel services line items that the fire department were able to sort of provide as a kind of replenishment of where they increased in other categories, as well as their pension costs as well. They also had a built-in savings here that it's kind of netted into that map. The 2024 fire health insurance budget line item, we were a little aggressive on. The actual premiums this year actually turned out to be a little bit less than we budgeted per full-time equivalent. So when you look at the budget in the fire department, you'll see that line item actually drops. It's not on a budgetary basis. The actual premiums are going up, I want to be totally clear. But the budget we had in this year for fire, we still just had more allocated to that than we actually needed. Okay, so one of the reasons fire looks like it's only up 1% is we've adjusted that budget line item back to the actual premium that they need. The premium is still higher on a year-over-year basis, but we just didn't need that much budgeted to that account. Let's see, the landfill, we talked about some of the equipment. There were a few different kind of trending items, I believe, off memory on that one. The mayor's office, the largest reduction there is just the elimination of the funding for the secretary position, which is a full-time position. So you had the reduction in the salaries, benefits, pension, etc. Police department was largely the contractual change, and then same thing, we had a few trending items on solid waste. So net, pretty modest change year over year, fit within the revenues, and from a priority perspective, when we look at specifically the general fund, it was about 74% going to public safety. Some key metrics. The chart on the left is the reserve. So this is defined and calculated as the ending cash balance estimated for December 31st next year. Okay, so we're calculating basically the rest of this year's revenue and expenses all the way through next year. So this is definitely a forecast, but it is a budget health metric that we try to track year over year to see how these are changing. We want this to be 15% at a minimum. Okay, really anything less than that, and you're really starting to get pretty tight. And you're starting to get to where, even as you get into the budget year, if you have a large additional appropriation or something like that, we need to be thinking about it, from a cash flow perspective. The good news is all of the funds are at or significantly above that. Park and Recreation is a fund that's been on our watch list. They've made a lot of strides. They've balanced the budget this year. They've been really looking at some of the departmental revenues as well to clean that up. And I think that it'll just continue to improve, but it is one that we want to pay attention to from a revenue and expense perspective, just to try to help make sure that that fund balance gets a little better. You may have seen the loans that have come through. That fund in general are on loans. Those are cash flow loans. So just to explain that for a second, the revenue and the expenses, when we look at 365 days, are equal, okay? But 90% of their revenue gets paid out twice a year, okay? So if we go, if you had a business that had to pay payroll from January 1st to June 15th with basically 10% of your revenue, that would be a pretty tough situation. And that's basically what parks in general look like from a cash flow perspective, because still the majority of their revenue is property tax, which is only paid out to the city twice per year, okay? So on an annualized basis, it's a balanced budget, but month to month, we have to kind of pay attention to that. That will get, if that number was like, let's say 25% or 30%, the city would probably be, you're getting really close to being out of that sort of temporary loan situation. So that gives the Parks Department sort of a North Star to sort of strive to. That's not going to happen overnight, right? That could take 10 years to do that, but that would definitely be a goal that would be advantageous for them to kind of work towards over time, okay? So like in the most basic math, if they got to a budget savings of 1%, it might take them 10 years to kind of build that reserve up. Comparatively, we look at motor vehicle highway, we look at local road and street, we look at cemetery, for example, MVH restricted, significant reserves. Anything over 100% means that they could pay their entire budget in cash on January 1st. That's basically how that math works, is that if it's 100% reserve, it means that they have 100% of their budget in cash, okay? So they could go over a year without making any revenue and still pay employees, pay vendors, etc. So those are significant reserves, which is one of the reasons why in our commentary, when we look at motor vehicle highway, with its paving sort of exceeding revenues, we sort of like, it's not really that big of a deal because that is baked into these numbers. So this still assumes that they spend that much on paving. So it's just really kind of using those cash reserves that have been saved up to put that money in blacktop, basically. The chart on the right is just looking at where the one on the left is sort of a metric. It's just ending cash divided by budget. The one on the right is actually looking at just cash in absolute terms. So it's just looking at it as far as how much do we actually think the city will have in its fund balances at the end of next year. And you can see general funds right at $3 million, followed by motor vehicle highway. So the key thing we're looking at there is everybody's positive, right? The closest one we get is cemetery. It's kind of a pass-through. It's a really small, de minimis amount of the total budget. But what we're looking for is nothing's projected to be negative, right? Everything sort of, if they spent every single dollar of their adopted budget, they still would be in a positive cash position. Okay? Almost done. So this is the budget in kind of the one picture, so the old adage of pictures worth 1,000 words. This is the best picture I can take to summarize, all the hundreds of line items that go into this thing. And so what you have on the left, those are the funds. Those are the various different sort of checkbooks, if you will, that make up the city as a conglomeration, as far as what the council budget approves. I do have them in different groups because they sort of are different and should be considered different. So the first kind of section here, this first group, you'll see I have this kind of term called core operating. These are the levy-controlled funds. So these are actually the funds that you're required to provide to the state from a budget perspective. These are funds that can and do receive property tax. So they have all of the budgetary strings attached with them outside of the city process. Okay, so these are the funds that we have to send out to different state agencies and make sure that these are the funds that ultimately go up on the tax bill. Okay, everything else is either an adjustment to those funds. So these are council adopted fiscal actions. So debt service, cumulative capital development, these are actions that this council takes above and beyond what the state entitles you to, okay? And then so these are discretionary, and if some councils or you all chose not to adopt these, they would all go to zero and you would lose that revenue and lose that rate, okay? The last group are what they call home rule funds. These are like pass-throughs, special revenues. These are really locally adopted funds. There's really no limit to these. Some units have none, some have several home rule funds, but these are just funds of the council that they want to also have in this sort of formal appropriation process, but they don't really get reviewed by the Department of Local Government Finance. So I say all that to then say when we look at this, the total budget citywide is $20,086,248. And when we look at the kind of very specific operating funds, they're all have a zero net result, which is revenues and expenses agreed. The only one that there's an exception is motor vehicle highway. That $390,000 is exactly the amount of money that's also budgeted in paving. So your budget, your balance from a personnel and an operating and recurring cost perspective, and it really would just take council saying, hey, we don't want to do the paving project, we would take that out of the budget, and then everything would be balanced. Okay. I think that is it. Yes, that is it. So I covered a lot. I appreciate everybody hanging with me. Are there any questions for me this evening?
Adam, back to, I guess, page 4 of your presentation, but revenue updates.
Yes.
When it breaks down for department, police, fire, EMS, police, EMS, fire. When it says salaries and benefits,
Yep.
we're talking specifically about public safety tax.
Yep.
So, in the other workshop form, you have it with the general funds, you have it broke down where this is your base salary, and then here's your benefits and all that. Those be taken out of your base salary whenever you get a paycheck, everything comes out of it, right? Salaries and benefits for the public safety tax. So if I'm giving you $5,000, how's that broken down?
Yep. So there are related pension costs for that extra $5,000, and there's related Medicare components of that as well. So the way that we have budgeted is how we understand it's going to be accounted for in payroll. So when they get that raise, right, it's going to be a % of their per pay, right? Like they're going to get that in the paycheck. So the accounting in the payroll is actually going to be, they're going to split the actual pay amounts to one portion may go to the general fund, one portion may go to the public safety local income tax. And that would be for the base pay, the $5,000, plus any kind of incremental amounts that $5,000 causes to the pension contribution, to Medicare, if they're assuming they're a sworn non-civilian position. Those are really the only adjustments other than the base pay.
So somebody gets, again, somebody gets $5,000.
Yep.
They're not really getting $5,000 on their base pay though, right?
No, what they will,
They'll get
they'll get their normal bi-weekly pay, and then they'll get $192.30 every 2 weeks. The Social Security will come out, and if you're an EMS, your perf will come out. The fire and police only pay perf on their
Certified salary.
certified salary. And that comes out of the general. So in the public safety, they'll get their $192 minus very little, nothing, I don't think, the fire and police, but the EMS will have their perf taken out on that.
I guess I have a little small question. You did mention the 3% COLA, but if I heard you correct, you only said full-time, or did you say part-time as well,
Yeah, good question, and we have it as full and part-time,
right?
and the only sort of exemptions or exceptions to that, the public safety is was calculated separately, because the police had their own sort of negotiated COLA, if you will, as part of their package, so that was already in there separately. And the fire and EMS, we dealt with the public safety local income tax pay adjustment. But every other department, every other civilian employee, both full and part-time, is estimated at the 3% cost of living adjustment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Adam.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. I know there's a lot here, so feel
yeah.
free to let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to have conversations between now and the adoption, whatever's gonna help, make sure, I wanna make sure everybody's informed for their constituents. Really the biggest thing we'll need some direction on is really the tax rate discussion. That's probably the biggest fiscal action above and beyond just sort of the departmental requests and those types of things. So I also want to just give a compliment to all the department heads. They were very gracious and patient with us through this whole process. Same thing with council and the committee. I really enjoy doing this. I think that's. But I really will also say the general fund being balanced, I believe, is a really positive sign. I mean, it's something that a lot of communities have not done. It's something that, say what you want about federal government, but that's a big deal. And I think you all should be, happy with that. And I think that will compound on itself. This year, I think we were within 1%. So that, what I have seen is that when you can get to that point and adopt it, you can kind of start to get ahead of that a little bit. So instead of sort of chasing it, you can start to kind of compound on some of those benefits. So I hope that's the case for Connersville as well. I'm happy to be helpful. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next meeting.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I like the explanation, because a lot of people think that property taxes are high. They went up, they think that we're collecting a lot more money, and that's just not the case.
No.
So I'm glad you showed that. That slide shows that. But we really need to nail down, really before the next meeting, what option they want to do with the tax rate, because that's going to drive everything at that point. Because we can't use those dollars for salaries. We can only use them for projects. But I think that's something we need to understand, is which direction you want to go, because you've got three options there.
Yep.
One, you can do nothing, and the tax rate drops.
Yep.
Or you can keep it at 50%, and it still drops, but it's more manageable.
Yep.
Or you can do the complete bond project, and that'll keep it flat.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Let's talk about those projects for a little bit, and just so everyone's on the same page, we understand. I asked Adam, I said, when we got all this built, I said, what does that equate to, dollar-wise? Because I don't have a clue.
Yep.
And make sure I get my numbers correct.
Yep.
But if you keep it flat,
Yep.
that's about a $8 to $10 million project, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
If you keep option 2, you're about a $5 million project. With River's Edge, we know River's Edge was about an $8 million project, and that was pre-inflation, so who knows what it is now. At $5 million, we were pretty confident we can get the baseball fields put in, get them out of the floodplain down there, and at least be playing baseball there. That's a 5-year bond, is that correct? 4 or 5, was it 4? There's a 5-year bond. So in 5 years, we'll be able to see what the rates are going to do at that point, with the AV and the levies and stuff like that. And then it can be either this council or the next council, whoever can determine, do they want to finish that project with another bonding or not? And then all that depends on where we're at with our AV and our caps, because there's a lot of caveats there that we can't control. We have to wait and see what happens. But for this budget, we really need to know a sense of direction that you guys want to go, because that's going to dictate really how we present this budget. Does that make sense? It's the same principle we got with the fire truck. It doesn't come out of the general fund. Everything is identical to this. We bonded it because we had that growth, we just couldn't capture it. This is, I hate to say a way to capture that growth, but we're capturing that growth to provide the services. And River's Edge seems to be one of those topics that we just could not figure out, because it's an expensive project. So I just need some thought and input and direction so we can kind of steer this thing in the direction we need to go. And we'll open up for public comment here in a second, but I want to get I want to explain everything, get council direction, and we'll open it up.
So we've seen general plans, but we haven't seen anything specific as far as we have to do X, Y, Z to get IDEM, to be done with IDEM, right? That's what the holdup is, right?
No, there's two different problems with River's Edge. The first one is DNR,
Right.
and that one's got to be resolved. IDEM wants them out of where they're at because of flood issues. That's how they was able to get the land purchased.
So the DNR spot is for River's Edge, but
We still got
what's the
DNRs,
benchmark to get done with them, to move on?
about 100 grand,
A little over that, about
150. To get the baseball fields there, again, 5 million is not going to get the whole project, but at least get the 2 or 3 baseball fields that we need to get them out of there. And at least start the process, and then we can figure out, do we want to continue this, or do we want to do something different? That's the options right now. Or do you want to do something completely different with that area? That's up to you.
Do we have a way of getting a plan together to find out exactly what that's gonna look like, and not just kind of, I
Not
don't
in
wanna
2
be making a
weeks.
decision on like kind of a whim.
Oh, no, we had a,
Well, ballpark,
Yeah.
the phrase, but ballpark this, but yet we missed the mark completely because all of a sudden, everything goes skyrocket.
we did, we had there was a study done to see, is it feasible to do, tournaments, or, what am I trying to say, Marla? Baseball tournaments and stuff there. It was determined that feasibility study that it will not pay for itself, because they're going to Indianapolis and Cincinnati's building a new one, they're just not gonna come here. So really, it's gonna be for our rec league only. We'll do some tournaments there, I'm sure, but we're not gonna draw the big tournaments. A company came in and priced it as building, I think they had 4 baseball fields with an extra one larger one in the future. And this was during COVID, and it was over $5 million. So that's the number we know. We know what inflation has done. If you want to add lights and all the other fields, then it's going to spike it up in $9 to $10 million. So that's where we come up with $5 million. We're pretty confident we can at least get, what we'll have to do is get it designed for a $5 million project and say, this is what you get for $5 million, which you'd think you'd get a lot for $5 million, but in today's economy, it doesn't go very far. And then that's what we get. At least we can get them out of the flood zone, get them playing baseball again. Well, they're playing baseball now, but get them on a new field out of the flood zone. That's really what our goal is. And that, all those engineering, the design was done way before COVID, so.
And we might not draw the big tournaments, but there's still a chance that we
There's still-
could do small ones. But also, we did have the amphitheater put up there. I mean, it's a small one, so you do have the potential for a little bit of income if you start drawing, small concerts and things like that. Like, you could still, with the space that's up there, there's still so much more that you can be doing. So it's not just that we would be relying just on rec league baseball, softball. There are other things that we can do. It's not gonna bring in $1 million, but it's still something more.
Is that project gonna bring any more additional staffing issues or needs?
At this time, no. I mean, we have, for the summer, as long as we can keep our summer staff, that really helps with mowing through the summer. And that's the main, maintenance that we have out there currently, is just keeping up on mowing and everything. Now, once we put ball fields out there, we may need to look at increasing and adding a couple other part-time staff to keep the ball fields, looking good and lined and mowed and everything.
Well, don't you do that at Little League now?
We do that now, yeah.
If you're swapping fields for fields, then I don't see where you're
We
going to
shouldn't
see.
need, yeah, we shouldn't need anybody.
Okay.
And we basically need to get out of the the place they are now, it's just floods all the time, right? Well,
I
not
don't know
lately,
about all the
but
time, but-
not recently.
Not recently.
When it
but
does, it's,
The issue was they bought that land out there with money from Smalley's, and it was a remediation fund, and IDEM approved it because they wanted them out of there. So that's the reason they was able to purchase the land with those funds, because IDEM doesn't want them down there. But there was no timeline given to get them out, but we know it's an issue. There's just never, it's one of those projects, it's hard to fund. We have so many things that need funded, it's hard, and that's a big one. And when this came up, I was like, I think this is our only opportunity to do something to get those ball fields. And that's really it.
And that all started, what, 9 years ago?
10.
It's been a
10.
while.
Was it 10?
This was before I was in office.
So, it's been a long, drawn-out process, and we have buildings just sitting there not being used, just rotten, and it'd be nice to get some use out of them and keep them maintained and cleaned up.
So would it be a major problem if we get the baseball fields and, don't worry about the lights this year or next year or the year after that?
The
And we
lights,
just-
the
The lighting, the lights.
The project, the $5 million was never designed with lights, I can tell you that.
Okay, yeah.
Because I asked a lot of people, like, why do we not have lights? And most people that play baseball said they don't ever play under lights anyway, they always play during the day.
Right.
I don't know if they do or not, but if we want lights, that's an extra, I forget how much, it was almost $500,000 or more. I think it was more than $500,000 if I remember to put lights out there.
We currently use the lights at the ball fields
Yeah.
where we're at.
Where we're at. So it's going to increase costs. We just have to sit down and say, this is what we got, design it for this, and then future growth, we can always see what happens in the future.
Yes.
Now, if you, I mean, the other option is to go after more, but I'm very concerned on that, because every time we make a move, the state has come back and just kind of kicked us at our knees. And I don't want to make a big step and then the state kick us again, because it hurts and it's hard to balance. So I think option 2, 50% is a very conservative approach. It gives us some flexibility if the, I shouldn't say if, when the state kicks us in the knees again. And that's something that's easily managed at that point. Was that
Yeah.
the max levy only? Yeah, you're going to reduce the rate, but I think there's some issues with that. If the state changes the quotient, it could seem like their property taxes went up when we raised them when we didn't. So this kind of keeps that very flat. It's still, option 2, it still reduces, but it's more of a manageable level.
That's right. And then just to add on to sort of the timing of all this, just using this as a visual aid for a minute. Assuming, just using the River's Edge as the example project, let's just say you do not adopt the budget funding that project this year. These two options go away, that's where the rate will go. Let's say next year, you decide, hey, that actually is what we need, okay? Then we're adding that rate up back to that. So now next year, we're sitting here saying, hey, it's not a falling situation, we're not trying to catch kind of where it's falling, we're raising up to that point. And that is a hard tax increase at that point. So that is why these sort of create this sort of situation. It's a, but I just wanted to kind of share that is why, you know, the only thing here is that the timing is pretty compressed, because in order to be on this kind of certified budget order that the city will receive, all this has to be sort of done by the end of the calendar year.
So just really need to know your thoughts on this before we move forward on it too much.
And you said that this budget is based on option 1.
That's right. We've allocated the budget, we've advertised the budget, just assuming the flat, just to give you all the most options there possible. I think from my personal take, if the project's a priority for the community, I think really anywhere between option 1 and option 2 is a good outcome. I think just, you know, I stare at numbers all day long. I think the trend line generally sort of falls within option 1 and option 2. You know, if you just sort of look at where that line is going, whereas the max levy option, it looks like there's an anomaly there. There's something, you know, it breaks the trend line pretty dramatically.
So option 1 gives you up to a $10 million
bond versus the 5 for the option 2?
Yeah, I mean, and there's obviously some flexibility there just because of duration and term, but generally, round terms, that's correct.
So with that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're borrowing up to that amount, right?
Correct.
Or do you have to borrow?
No, really what you're budgeting is the debt levy. So you're budgeting the tax rate amount, and then later this year, we would have to come back before you with all the sort of project authorizations and all that. The only immediate action that you have to take, or would have to take at your next meeting, if you want to do it, is really just kind of picking where you want to fall on this spectrum. And then you'd have the rest of the calendar year to sort of figure out, you don't even technically have to approve a project right now. It's really just a matter of which of these tax rate options do you want. And we can, I'm happy to prepare, additional information if there's consensus or direction on sort of one or the other, or if you want us to run both, I'm happy to do that in preparation for your next meeting.
I prefer 1 and 2, both dived into a little bit more.
Okay.
I would also like to see what 75% does.
Okay. So we've got what I'm gonna call kind of 1A, and a 2, okay? So we got 100, we keep it flat, which is basically how we advertised it. The 1A, or the new 2, will be the 75%, and then the 150. And then, once we have the 75%, you could almost kind of divide that by 3, and that would also give you sort of this sort of number, kind of like right in here too. There's a whole lot of opportunity between doing nothing and doing the flat, but it's really just a matter of what you all want to do. So, okay, I've got my takeaways. I'm happy to.
One more order of
Yeah.
business, sorry. Unless you need to go, you can go.
No, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
here for you guys.
The paving issue, go back to that
Yeah.
last slide, because I want the very last one. So it does look like, if you look at the 390,000,
Done.
it looks like it's in the negative. So your option is, the money's in a fund for paving for next year. But if you truly want to keep it at a 0, that means there will be no paving done next year.
Well, we really can't do that.
I know that, but I'm just making it very clear.
Okay.
What the understanding is, so that 39, it looks like a negative, it looks unbalanced, it's technically not. On paper it is. But the only way to get that a balance would be to not pave it all next year, even though the money's sitting there, or will be there. I just want to make that clear, because sometimes you see that negative number and we're like, well, that's unbalanced, and it's not, because it's in fund.
Yeah, a couple other ways I've seen that done is like they basically pull that into another column as sort of capital. But what I would just point out is if you decided you decided to do no paving, then we would basically take 390,000 and we would just put it in cash. So you're basically choosing between more cash, or more paving. That's at the most basic level. That's sort of what you're doing, because it would just put more into your ending cash position. And that fund, if you recall from this slide, which is the reason why we got comfortable with that, was that it had already, this assumes that money is spent, it already had 52% reserves. So it already had 2 or 3 times the amount of reserves. It could have actually spent more on paving.
Yes, and the reason we don't is because you have to do this well in advance of the paving cycle. You have to, I go out and I measure each road, and I have to come up with an average on what I think it's gonna be. The engineers come up with an average, and then you bid it out. If you come in under, you're okay. If you come in over, you can't do that. You gotta come up with the money, and that is not a fun situation to be in. So we are very conservative in our approach. We try to get as close as we can, and then the rest goes into the savings, and then we can use that at a future date. Which we're glad we did save that money, because it's helping us out this year. Because without us saving that money, we'd have been up a creek for next year. There would have been any paving next year. So I just want everyone to understand how that works and why there's money sitting in there. The processes can be very challenging for community process. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Sorry.
You're good. All good?
Okay, so I'll open up the public hearing on this, and then we will not adopt this budget tonight. We'll have to do a first reading vote, and then it will be the next council meeting when it gets adopted. But I do want to open it up for the public hearing while Adam's still here, if you don't mind. open up for the public. Anyone from the public have anything they want to say?
Everyone's so quiet.
Coming in? You coming in?
Yes.
Can we move that pulp up here, please? Yes, sir.
Yeah, bring it back.
Thank you.
Hello, Scott Brown. I am the union steward for Fayette County EMS. One of the questions I have, well, actually two. I know previous negotiations, we have a 12% raise over a 4-year period. That 3% that we should be getting this coming January, would that be on top of the $5,000 that we will currently receive, or will the $5,000 be first, then the $3,000, or the 3%?
Everything contractual will be in there, and then the 5,000 is on top. I don't remember what the EMS was. I thought your contract ended this year.
Contract does, but the wage negotiations last year was 12% over a 4-year period.
I know the police did, because their contract's a different term than yours, but I thought yours was already paid, 12% was already paid out.
Negative. We were going 3% for each year for 4 years.
And this is the 4th year of the contract. So
Uh,
next year will be year 5, that's a new contract.
Well, we went to wage negotiations last year. Contract was this year, we're negotiating now, but wage negotiations we go to every year.
I don't have that, we'll have to double check that one.
You're saying last year we entered into a 4-year agreement?
When we were discussing wages, it was 12% over 4 years.
Which is what we did, because this is year 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we just want to make sure
No,
if
it'd be in there, I'll check it, but this
Okay.
is year 4, about positive this is year 4. Because the police is only one, because they're on a different cycle, you and fire is on the same cycle in streets, and theirs is ended too. Police is only one, because their negotiation, was there, Mr. Durson, when, were you on year 2 or yours, or year 3?
We're on year 3.
3, so they got one more year. But I think this is your 4-year contract, and those 12%'s already been given. But let me double check all that.
yeah, we need to double check if you don't mind.
We
All
will.
right, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Durston?
Actually, we're negotiating in 26, so not next year. I'm gonna step in for Ryan. He's our FOP president, and he had to step out and take a call. But just want to say I appreciate and agree with the county passing the emergency responders tax to better support all the first responders in Fayette County. While looking over the proposed budget regarding the lit tax, the money could be better allocated, allowing a higher wage increase that was being proposed. In Fayette County, we have a great amount of support from our community for our first responders. Citizens of this community were told before that this tax was solely to increase the wage and salaries of first responders in an effort to keep our first responders in Fayette County. Over the last 4 years, I've watched nearly a dozen officers leave due to the lack of wages and benefits offered by the city council. Now, I can only speak for what I observed at the police department, but I'm sure fire and EMS is in the same situation that we are. Currently, 2 or 3 more officers are in other counties' processes as they are seeking a higher wage and more competitive benefits, leaving our community gravely understaffed and costing taxpayer citizens more money by forcing to work officers 8 hours after working their 8-hour shift, which causes a safety concern not only for the officers being forced, but the other officers that are on shift with them, which should have this city council concerned and asking questions regarding the circumstances that led to this problem. Should ask, what can I do to attract quality candidates while also retaining current first responders in this city? I've been an officer for almost 8 years and have seen this city council take benefits from our first responders while giving excuse after excuse for not giving wages and benefits similar to counties of our size. You have an opportunity to solve these issues with this lit tax. If this lit tax is approximately allocated towards first responders' wages and benefits, I urge you to recall what was first promised to the public. The tax was worded and proposed to increase wages and benefits in an attempt to retain valuable first responders, keep your word to your constituents, and change the proposed allocations of the tax to what it was intended for and what was told that I heard that hardworking taxpayers. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to address my concerns regarding this matter. I only have one question. What is the breakdown of percentages in wages and benefits versus equipment in the lit funding spending?
Yeah, it's exactly what we said from the beginning. We said wages, benefits, and equipment. We did 75,000, which is roughly 75% and 25%. So in equipment, we did the 5,000, the rest goes in equipment. If we don't fund equipment, we'll be in the same shape when I took over office, and it's all old rust buckets. We use ARP dollars to do that. We spent
A lot of money.
almost $2 million on equipment that we wouldn't have been able to get without ARP dollars. Now, I don't like ARP dollars, what they did to our economy, but if we don't start putting money back for equipment, then we're gonna be in the same situation that I came into with all rusted out equipment. So we have to put money back for equipment. And I said that very clearly in that very first public meeting we had. It is for wages and benefits. I said the 5,000, we achieved that. And then the rest of it will go into equipment fund. And that's still, the equipment fund is very little amount. It's gonna take several years to build that up. You get the equipment we need. But we have to start by saving some money back. So when we come time for the equipment, we can purchase those.
So as it stands, the current breakdown is 75-25?
I don't know the exact breakdown. Adam, you have the exact breakdown? We did the 5,000 exactly, plus we don't know exactly what that end number's gonna look like. If it comes in less than 650,000, I don't think you want a pay cut, so we'll take it out of the equipment. If it comes in more, that's a different discussion we can have. So no one knows exactly what that number's gonna be. It's an estimated guess. Good way to say it, Adam, not guess.
It's an estimate. I mean,
So
that is a true
if it comes in at 600,000, I gotta find 50 grand somewhere,
You can see the salary and benefits are more than the capital replacement fund.
a bunch more.
The salary and benefits are almost twice the capital replacement, almost.
What's this include?
That's all capital, just capital. This is salaries and benefits.
Okay. Can I get a copy of this?
You can have
Take
that.
it. All right. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Don't be bashful. Okay. I will close the public hearing. And we were requesting a pass on first reading only, the 2025 budget pending ordinance 3957. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
No.
Do a roll call.
Sorry, roll call vote for, please.
Councilwoman McQueen? Yes. Councilwoman Barrett?
Yes.
Councilman Williams Jr.?
Yes.
Councilwoman Phillips?
Yes.
Councilman Robb?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yeah.
Councilman Collins?
No.
Okay, we will schedule the next meeting for the third and final reading. Let's see your agenda. I made a mistake, I grabbed the wrong agenda. We have, I forgot, approval of resolutions 2024-57 and 58, I apologize. Rosemary?
Resolution 2024-57 is a resolution to reimburse $1,395.06 into landfill recycle dumpster. Resolution 2024-58 is a resolution to transfer $500 from mayor's promotion to restricted elders luncheon.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Move on down to department reports. We're gonna start with ordinance enforcer, Mr. Wulff. Ms. Chief Bolus is sick.
Good evening, council. Good evening. Ordinance office report for August 2024. conducted 110 different ordinance violations, 47 of those being relating to grass and weeds, 21 accumulation of trash and rubbish that needs picked up, 13 expired plates, abandoned vehicles, and demolition derby cars that needed to be removed from property, 10 interior furniture outside the home, primarily couches and mattresses, 6 parking positions, 4 dangerous buildings were addressed, 3 property line disputes relating to putting up and fences that were falling over into other people's property that they needed some assistance and clarity as to who could move the fence. So some of those I had to direct and refer to move the area planning. 2 for trees and shrubs obstructing visibility, 2 animal control assists relating to dogs and cats, 1 ordinance amendment for removal of a handicap parking sign, and 1 public information request. I'm currently still working on reviewing our city's ordinances related to vacant housing, dilapidated homes, and how we can best address that issue as a city. I'm reviewing actions other cities are taking to address these issues, and how to source funding, how they've sourced funding, and how to partner with the other city and county departments to try to have the fastest and most positive impact that we can to get these things remediated without adding any real additional cost to the city. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Wilson, did he step out? Is Jeremy out there, Wilson? There he is.
Evening. Utilities monthly report, fund balances, I spoke earlier with the board works, they're looking a little lower. Brad and I, before we left out, we looked at the fund balances and transferred $1 million, $200,000 from each account to invest while the market's still doing good, so we can continue to grow money during the projects that we have. We had 6,300 in overtime. The water plant pumped 71 million gallons this past month. We added 497 gallons of bleach. That's how we kind of, I guess, chlorinate the line. We don't use chlorine anymore because the dangers of it. The wastewater treatment plant, we had treated a total of 79.5 million gallons. For the month of August, we had just 2.45 inches of rain. So hopefully the rain's on the agenda for this next meeting because we sorely need it. The transfer station, we took in 460 tons. Public disposal was 458 tons. The total waste sent to the landfill was 918 tons. 20 ton of recycling. Took in about $25,000. Street department, we continue to work on the mulch strip. We're going to finish 8th and 9th Street, and that should be the gist of getting the mulch bed done. Don't have anything else. If anybody has any questions for me, feel free to ask, and then make it to the last meeting. Anybody has anything? I will update council on the paving that's going on in town. You can see that detour was happening from 24th to 29th. It's supposed to end up being, I think, 2 weeks. I mean, send the utility guys over there to help kind of mitigate traffic, the lane closures to probably roughly 3 days. We had finished the water tap today. We're going to do the sewer tap tomorrow. The crew that's on site there are going to finish their storm probably tomorrow. So we're on schedule a whole lot sooner than 2 weeks. So they won't have Western shut down for 2 weeks as it was proposed. Like I said earlier, I got a lot of positive feedback over the past week or so on the shutdown. So I think the utility's going to do a good job helping to get that open faster than the 2 weeks. I think everybody'd be happy for that.
Can you talk to Randy about getting one of his guys to sit over on Iowa during school hours, just to kind of watch out right there? We don't have a crossing guard on that side, and we have walkers that go out that side. So
that's no problem.
It's something that we talked about at our school. So if we could just
I'll talk to him first thing in the morning.
Yeah, in the mornings and at our dismissal time, just to have somebody sitting there, kind of slowing people down.
Yep. officer
Since-
presence is always a good thing, that's children
Yeah.
around, there's an influx in the traffic on that road.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. I think last meeting I wasn't present, but Javen, I think you had a question about the yards.
I think you guys got it handled, but that's good.
Okay. Yeah, we were pretty steady on them. I think we have 2 left out of the entirety of them. They keep coming in, but we keep tackling them. Street department's doing a pretty good job of keeping up on them.
Yeah, if you could, can you give me a call tomorrow about storm drain on the
Yep.
north end?
Not a problem. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Pawsey.
Good evening. For the month of August, we had 11 hours, 43 minutes of original program, 29 hours, 15 minutes of meeting production, which is kind of the first experience with going into additional meetings, which we'll be doing at the start of the year, quite a bit more. And in preparation for that, on the report, you may notice that I had to list meetings on the backside. For the month, we had 7,727 views on the YouTube channel, 1,436 hours of viewing, 3,666 subscribers. Facebook, 23,600 reach, which was excellent last month. City impressions, 18,400. So doing pretty good with reaching the community. Any questions? Okay, real quick. This Thursday night will be the county candidate forum, as well as the school board candidate forum will be live at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Steele. Chief Harden's out.
Good evening.
Yeah,
So I
tired of
just-
sitting, huh?
Yeah, don't mind me, just looking around. So I just wanted to report on the pool. We went through the end of August with our season. And August was a little slower. We did have a lot, we were full of pool parties for the month of August. But I'm happy to report that we had 16 lifeguards for the summer, which was great. And then we had in attendance over 10,000 visitors for the entire summer. So that was up from last year at 8,000. So that's a great increase. And I just want to say a special thank you to the Fayette County Foundation for supplying the mini grant to help fund yard activities that we put out at the pool this summer, and they seem to be a big hit. The kids really enjoyed just taking a break, especially if they were there for a long period of time, taking a break and going over and playing in the yard with the activities that we had over there. And I do want to say also the age difference, I feel, made a huge impact this summer, increasing it to 14. So thank you for that, because it really, I really think it helped a lot at the pool this summer. Living Well, Aging Well programs, we had them going on through the summer, but we didn't have any activities going on at the Miller Building just because of the weather and it being nice and everybody wanted to be outside. But we did have Living Well, Aging Well at the pool. We had open swim for them every week. But we have now set our calendar for the fall, winter, and early spring. So the activities have started back up for the month of September. And I have been working on bids for the bridge, and Board of Works approved a quote this morning, or this afternoon, so that we can get the bridge painted. So you will be seeing that work done hopefully soon. So I'm gonna contact them and get them started. October 2nd is Community Day of Sharing, and we will be at 2nd Street Park trying to get some things done there. We're gonna put the fence up and plant the plants that we have, and we're waiting on just an update on 2nd Street. We have a contractor working on finishing the groundwork that needs to be done underneath of the swing set area. And once he finishes that, hopefully this week, then we can contact the company to lay the turf for that area, and then also the mulch for the other section that gets mulched. So It's moving along, it is slow, but it is moving along, and we're trying to get that done as soon as we can. And then just some upcoming events. Girls basketball registrations are open until September 20th. Community Day of Sharing is October 2nd. Renaissance Fair is October 10th. That's on a Saturday this year. And we are going to extend our hours, so it's going to be a longer event, and we will have a movie in the evening once it starts to get a little dark out. And then the First Responders Trunk or Treat is going to be Tuesday, October 29th. And then we are currently taking reservations or registrations for Illuminate the Park to put lights in the park. And then our Christmas in the Park event for the community is December 5th from 5 to 7. Does anybody have any questions?
The Renaissance, was it on the 10th or the 12th?
10.
Thursday?
It's the Saturday.
Saturday.
It's a Saturday. Did I say the wrong date? It's the
I was just trying to make sure.
October
I was just-
12th.
I just seen the dates behind you, so.
Oh, yeah, but you had 10th
Yeah, you
on your
said 10th.
report.
You had 10th on the report.
My apologies. It is the 12th, October 12th.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments?
One other thing, how long are we gonna keep the cornhole board next to the nickel plate at the entrance? That wood is starting to like decay.
Yeah, we'll be taking that down at the end of this season.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Monthly report for the fire department for August. Start off with overtime. We had a total overtime $11,559.24. August was a 3-pay month, so the overtime is a little high. Even though there was 3 pays, it is up still a little bit. The manpower shortage portion of that was $10,133.01, and then the scheduled overtime portion of that was $1,426.23. Any questions on the overtime? Moving on down to fuel usage, we used 413 gallons of fuel for the month for a total cost of $1,512.78. Below that, you'll see our total incidents for the month. We had a total of 161 incidents. 44 of those were fire-related incidents. 110 were EMS-related incidents, and we had 7 auto accidents. On the next page, you'll see our training hours. For August, we had a total of 62 instructed hours of training. 57 of those were fire-related instructed hours, and 5 of those EMS-related hours. Next, you'll see we had a total of 11 inspections, and we had 0 hours of fire investigation for the month. Just a few other things to note at the bottom. I did list, I don't know if John has, do you have those pictures? We had some pictures I showed the Board of Works earlier of the new lockers that were approved that we got. You see, I'll start with one. First couple pictures. Go back a couple. Go back another one. Yeah, there you go. That's the original lockers. They're somewhat small, like I said before. The guys all have 2 sets of gear, and there's a lot to cram in those cubbies. So have the opportunity to get these new lockers, was huge. You can scroll to the next one. There's another example. Those are a little bit bigger. And then now the next 2 or 3 pictures show the lockers after they were installed. They're much bigger, a lot easier to organize all your gear. And for the most part, I've heard everybody's happy with them. So I wanted to let you guys know how that we got those done. And then we did some painting. Assistant Chief Stevens did the painting and installed the lockers for us. So that was an improvement on Station 1. The top picture, the doors were white even though they're up, so I think the station looks a lot better also. But I just wanted to let you guys be able to see some of those things that was going on. I also have on here the new truck update. This morning at the Board of Works meeting, I hadn't heard back from the salesman yet, but he did call me back, and he said that he hasn't gotten another update from the manufacturer yet down in Florida, which the last update we had was not till next summer. They postponed everything. We did have an expected date of October, next month, of receiving that truck, but unfortunately, he said they put them all back, so now we're looking at next summer until I get an update, you know, hopefully that's when we'll get it, so other than that, that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Moving on to old business. Anyone have any old business? Miscellaneous business? Public. I'm not gonna put anything to say. It's your opportunity to give a speech. No takers. Never get a taker on that, Adam. Take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
A motion second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Have a good evening.